My name is Clara Hayes, and my mother told me not to ruin the photos at her 70th birthday party before I had even taken my coat off. The party was held in the glass atrium of a small botanical hotel outside the city. There were cream tablecloths, a string quartet near the windows, and a large projection screen behind the birthday table that would later display a slideshow of my mother's life. Everyone had been told to wear soft colors. Everyone had been told to arrive by 5:30 so the photographer could begin the family portraits before dinner. I arrived at 5:27 with my 11-year-old son, Eli. He wore a pale blue shirt and had practiced the smile my mother always asked for when there were pictures. In the car, he had asked me whether Grandma would like the card he made. He had drawn a flower garden and written, "Happy 70th birthday, Grandma. I love you." My mother, Susan, saw us from across the room. She walked over quickly, looked at Eli's shirt, then looked at me. "Clara," she said, lowering her voice, "please don't ruin the photos tonight." I thought I had misheard her. Ruin them how? I asked. She glanced toward the photographer, then toward my half-sister Natalie, who was standing on the photo platform with her husband and their two children. "Just don't make this about old things," my mother said. "The main portraits are going to be simple. You and Eli can be in some later ones if there is time." Eli was standing beside me. He heard every word. I looked at the platform. There were 6 chairs arranged in a curve. My mother, her husband Greg, Natalie, her husband, and their 2 children had places. There was no chair for me. There was no chair for Eli. My mother smiled as though she had solved something delicate. "Please," she said, "just make the night easy." That was when I understood that the photographs were not about memory. They were about who my mother had already decided belonged in the picture. The chairs on the platform were not random furniture. They were a map. Every empty space told a story about who had been anticipated before the guests entered the room. I had been in enough family gatherings to know that a chair can be added in 10 seconds when someone wants it added. The fact that no chair existed for Eli or me was not a scheduling mistake. It was an instruction that had already been followed by everyone in the room. That realization changed the way I saw the whole atrium. The flowers, music, and soft lighting were not the problem. The problem was that the beauty had been arranged around a silence I was expected to keep. I did not need to destroy the event to reject that silence. I only needed to stop treating it as normal. I had chosen my dress carefully that afternoon, not because I wanted attention, but because birthdays had always taught me to arrive prepared for someone else's expectations. I had brought a card, a small gift, and the patience my mother expected from me. The only thing I had not brought was a willingness to be edited out of the family story for the sake of an attractive slideshow. I had heard versions of that phrase for years. Make it easy. Do not create tension. Do not bring up the past. In my family, those sentences were usually directed at the person who had been hurt, not the person who had done the hurting. I had learned to translate them into something simpler. Please accept less so everyone else can stay comfortable. My mother had remarried 12 years earlier. Greg was kind when there was an audience and distant when there was not. Natalie, his daughter, had become the center of every holiday almost immediately. She was not cruel in obvious ways. She simply moved through family events as if the room had been designed around her. Over time, I became the daughter who was expected to understand. I could arrive later. I could sit farther down the table. I could bring the extra dessert. I could take the candid photos so other people could be in the posed ones. Eli had inherited the same role without anyone saying it aloud. At the party, I saw him watching the platform. The photographer's assistant was adjusting lights. Natalie's children were laughing and taking turns sitting in the front chairs. Eli stood close to me, holding his card from my mother with both hands. "Are we taking pictures too?" he asked. "Yes," I said, because I did not yet know what else to say. My mother had already turned away. She was telling the photographer that she wanted the first portraits clean and immediate, family only. The photographer nodded as he checked a clipboard. I felt something in my chest tighten. It was not jealousy. I was not competing for a place next to my mother's cake. I was tired of watching a child learn that family can be a stage where some people are invited to clap from the wings. I knelt beside Eli. "Stay with me," I told him. He looked toward the chairs again. "Did Grandma forget us?" "No," I said quietly. She didn't forget. That answer was harder to say than any lie would have been. I had once believed that keeping quiet protected relationships. But quietness only protected the version of the relationship that cost me the most. Each time I made myself smaller, my family learned that smallness was available on demand. My mother called it flexibility. I began to see it as training. Eli did not need another adult example of someone accepting a lesser place so the room could stay pleasant. I also knew my mother would later say she had not meant to hurt us. Intent mattered, but it could not be the only measure. A person can cause harm through priorities they refuse to examine. That was why I started paying attention to plans, not promises. Plans show where people expect you to stand. I thought about the many, small ways a family can assign one person the role of emotional caretaker. You learn to anticipate the missing chair, to bring extra food, to check whether your child has a place before you enter. You become so practiced at compensating that other people stop seeing the labor. That party made me realize I had been doing the work of belonging for years, and Eli was beginning to inherit the cost. The photographer introduced himself as Owen. He was in his 40s, calm and efficient, with a black camera strap across his chest and a small tablet attached to his belt. I watched him move through the room, checking lighting angles and greeting guests. He had a printed shot list on a clipboard. At first, I assumed it was normal event planning. Of course, a photographer needed names and groupings. Then I saw the heading, Susan's 70th, Priority Portraits. Under it were numbered groups. 1. Susan and Greg. 2. Susan, Greg, Natalie, Mark, Ava, and Theo. 3. Susan with grandchildren. 4. Susan with her sisters. 5. Extended family if time permits. There were no names under number 5, but beside it in my mother's handwriting was a note, Clara plus Ili after cake. If needed, after cake. If needed. The words did not look dramatic on paper. That was what made them so sharp. They looked ordinary, organized, like a schedule for something more important than to people's feelings. I did not grab the clipboard. I did not accuse Owen of anything. He was doing the work he had been hired to do. But I took a photo of the page with my phone when he set it down beside the lighting case. My mother saw me. "Clara," she said, warning in her voice. "I'm just checking the order," I answered. "You always assume the worst." "No," I said. "I am reading what is written." For a second, her face changed. Then she smiled at a guest walking past and said, "The first portrait session began before the appetizers arrived." My mother took her place in the center chair. Greg stood behind her. Natalie and her family arranged themselves around them. The photographer gave small instructions. shoulders toward the light, hands lower, eyes here. Eli, and I stood behind the lighting stand near the windows. My mother looked beautiful. She wore a silver dress and a string of pearls that had belonged to my grandmother. Guests watched with the kind of soft attention people give a milestone birthday. Then Owen's assistant, a young woman named Priya, walked past us carrying a tablet. The screen was open to a folder of behind-the-scenes images. One thumbnail caught my eye. It showed my mother beside Owen's clipboard before we arrived. She was pointing to the shot list, and she was saying something to him. The camera had captured the list clearly enough that I could see the words Clara plus Eli after cake. If needed, I asked Priya, could I see that image for a moment? She hesitated. It's just a Candid from setup. I know, I said. I'm in the family. She handed me the tablet. The image was not edited. It did not need to be. My mother's finger was on the line with our names. Owen was listening. Greg stood a few feet away, looking toward the platform. The timestamp showed 5:04 p.m. We had not even arrived yet. My mother had not reacted in the moment. She had planned it before the party began. I handed the tablet back to Priya. Thank you, I said. She looked uncomfortable. I didn't know what the note meant. I know, I replied. That was the thing about documented truth. It did not require strangers to understand the whole family history. It only required them to preserve what happened. I returned to Eli, who was tracing circles on the side of his shoe with his toe. Mom, he asked, are we still waiting? I looked at the photo platform, at the list, at the people pretending this was a normal order of events. Yes, I said, but not for them. I had spent years explaining my mother's choices to myself before I allowed myself to feel them. She was tired. She was trying to keep peace. She had a lot to organize. But explanation cannot replace accountability. The candid image became important because it removed the fog. It showed the moment the decision became a plan. It had a timestamp, a clipboard, a finger on the line, and no room left for anyone to say I had made the whole thing up. The camera did not make my mother cruel. It only removed the soft language that had covered the choice. That distinction stayed with me. Truth is not always an attack. Sometimes it is simply an unedited image, displayed long enough for people to see what they had agreed not to notice. Priya looked like she wanted to say something comforting, but I was grateful she did not. Comfort can sometimes blur a fact before you have had time to understand it. The image was clear. My mother had not been caught in a careless second. She had been coordinating the outcome. That was painful, but it was also clarifying. I could not repair what I continued to call an accident. We stepped outside into the hotel's covered garden for a few minutes. It was cooler there. The music from the quartet softened behind the glass doors. Eli sat on a bench beside a row of ferns. He held his grandmother's card in his lap. Why do they need the family photos without us? Asked. Children ask direct questions because they have not yet learned to decorate reality for adults. I sat beside him. Some people care too much about how things look, I said. Do I look wrong? My heart dropped. No, I said immediately. You look exactly like you. And you belong with me. He stared at the card. Maybe Grandma only wants the people who live with her. That was what my mother would have said if I had confronted her. She would have called it a practical distinction. Immediate family. Household family. The clean wording people use when they want to create a hierarchy without naming it. But Eli was not a practical problem. He was my son. He was my mother's grandson. I told him, you don't have to stand in any picture. where you feel like you have to earn your place. He looked at me. Can we go home? Part of me wanted to say yes immediately. Another part wanted to wait because leaving before dinner would become the story my mother told. Clara was dramatic. Clara made the birthday about herself. Clara ruined the photos. Then I remembered the note. After cake, if needed. No one had accidentally left us out. They had decided in advance that our belonging was negotiable. We can go home, I said. But first, I need to make one decision. What decision? I need to decide whether we're going to keep showing up for a family that only wants us when the picture is convenient. Eli nodded slowly. He did not understand every word, but he understood enough to take my hand. Eli did not need a complicated account of adult favoritism. He needed a stable answer. He needed to know that no photograph, birthday, or family tradition was important enough to require him to accept being treated as extra. I learned that children often understand boundaries through action before they understand them through language. When I took his hand and stayed beside him, I was showing him what protection looked like. We sat there until Eli's breathing slowed. I wanted him to understand that leaving was not losing. It was choosing a place where he did not have to prove he was lovable. I wanted that idea to become more familiar to him than the old urge to wait quietly for an adult to remember him. I told Eli that sometimes adults make decisions based on their own fears and call those decisions practical. He did not need to carry that explanation as a burden. He only needed to know the truth that mattered most. He had done nothing wrong by wanting to sit with his mother, and there was nothing wrong with being hurt when someone treated him like an option. When we walked back inside, dinner had begun. My mother was seated at the center table, laughing too loudly at something Greg said. The photographer was preparing the slideshow, which was scheduled to play during the dessert toast. I approached Owen near the projection booth. Can I ask you a question? I said. Of course, he replied. Did my mother ask you not to include my son and me in the main family portraits? Owen looked surprised. I was given a priority list, he said carefully. I assumed there were additional groups later. There were, I said. After cake, if needed. His face changed as he understood. I'm sorry, he said. I don't create family decisions. I follow the list. I know. I'm not asking you to fix it. I showed him the photo I had taken of the shot list and asked whether he could send me the original Candid image from setup after the event. He nodded. Yes, I can send the full gallery to the booking email after delivery, and I can include the original file. That was enough. I did not want him to interrupt the party. I did not need. Dessert began at 8:15. The lights dimmed. The first slides appeared. My mother as a child. My mother in college. My mother holding me as a baby. My mother on vacation with Greg. My mother with Natalie's children. Guests smiled. Some clapped. My mother dabbed at her eyes. Then the slideshow shifted to the Candid gallery from setup. There were photos of flowers being arranged, photos of guests arriving, photos of the quartet tuning instruments, photos of my mother checking the cake. Then the image appeared. My mother stood beside Owen's clipboard. Her finger pointed directly to the line that read, Clara plus Eli after cake, if needed. The shot list filled enough of the frame that anyone who looked could read it. For 3 seconds, the room stayed silent. Then someone near the front said, What does that mean? My mother turned toward the screen. I watched her face lose color. Natalie stood up, halfway from her chair. Greg reached for the remote, but Owen had already changed to the next image. It was over. The photograph had not shouted. It had not accused anyone. It had simply shown the plan. My mother looked at me across the room. "Clara," she said, barely moving her lips. I did not answer. I was not interested in making her panic quieter for the guests. The image had already done what the photo list had always been meant to do. It had made a decision visible. Eli looked up at me. "Was that our names?" "Yes," I said. "What does 'if needed' mean?" I looked at the screen, then at my mother. "It means someone forgot that you should never have to ask whether you belong." When the image appeared, I felt no triumph. I felt grief. I wished the screen had shown a different kind of Candid. My mother laughing with Eli. A last-minute chair being added, a hand reaching out to include us. But the photo showed what was actually there. The room's silence was not proof that I had won anything. It was proof that people finally understood the cost of the arrangement they had treated as harmless. The image was on screen for only a few seconds, but it changed the emotional center of the evening. The party could continue, the cake could be cut, and guests could go home. But nobody could honestly say the exclusion had been accidental. The list had made the hierarchy visible, and the gallery had made the list public. The room had been built for my mother's comfort, but the gallery screen did not care about comfort. It displayed what the camera had collected. In that way, the photograph felt almost merciful. It did not add interpretation. It did not repeat my anger. It merely showed everyone the sentence my mother had hoped would remain backstage, where no one would have to examine it. My mother came to our table after the slideshow ended. Her eyes were bright with anger and embarrassment. "You let that image stay up," she said. I looked at her. "It was part of the gallery. You knew what it would do." "No," I said. "I knew what it showed." She lowered her voice. "This is my birthday. You could have waited until tomorrow." Waited for what? For another event where Eli and I are scheduled after cake if needed. My mother glanced around the room. Guests were pretending not to watch, which meant they were listening to every word. "I was trying to keep the photos organized," she said. "Organized around whom?" She did not answer. Natalie walked over and said, "Mom didn't mean anything by it. You always make things more personal than they are." I almost felt sorry for her. She had grown up in the center of the photograph and could not imagine what it felt like to stand behind the lights. "It is personal," I said. "It is my son's name on the list." Greg said, "We were going to take an extended family photo later. After cake, if needed," I replied. The exact words changed the air. No one could call them a misunderstanding because they were printed. No one could say, "Imagined the order because it was on the screen." No one could tell Eli he had heard wrong because he had seen his name. My mother whispered, "You ruined the night." I looked at her for a long moment. "No," I said. "You asked us to disappear so the night would look perfect." The photograph just showed everyone what that cost. My mother wanted the conflict to be private after the public proof appeared. That was not surprising. Many people want truth to be discreet only after it threatens the image they have worked to maintain, but I was not going to shout or shame her. I only repeated the words from the list. The sentence had been written before I arrived. I had not created it. I had simply refused to carry it alone. I was careful not to ask anyone to take my side. I did not want Eli to see adults forced into camps. I only wanted the people who had written the plan to take responsibility for it. That was the difference between seeking revenge and seeking a boundary. One demands humiliation. The other demands a change. I could see my mother's mind searching for a way to make the moment about my reaction instead of her choice. That was familiar. If I sounded upset, the focus could shift to my tone. If I left, the focus could shift to my departure. But I stayed with the simplest fact. The plan was written, the plan was shown, and Eli was not a complication in it. He was the person being asked to wait outside the frame. The cake had not been served yet. There was a large number 70 made of white sugar flowers. My mother had chosen it herself. A server waited near the dessert table, unsure whether to bring it out. I did not want to take the cake away from her. I did not want to make a speech. I only wanted to leave before my son learned that adults can expose you and then demand you stay for the celebration. I took Eli's hand. "We're going home," I told him. My mother stepped forward. "You can't leave now. People will think something happened. Something did happen. Clara, please. Don't make this worse." I had heard that phrase all night. Make it easy. Don't ruin the photos. Don't make... At home, I made tea for Eli, even though it was late. He sat at the kitchen table and asked whether he could keep the blue card he had given my mother. I told him Grandma had it now. Then I opened my laptop. I created a folder called 70th Birthday. Inside it, I saved the photo of the shot list. I saved the original Candid when Owen emailed it the next morning. I saved a screenshot of a message from Natalie that said, "Mom is furious. You embarrassed her in front of everyone." I did not save the messages because I wanted to build a case against my mother. I saved them because I knew what would happen next. People would call it a misunderstanding. They would say the list was only for timing. They would say I should have trusted my mother's intentions instead of focusing on a few words, but the folder kept the sequence intact. My mother had planned the photo order before we arrived. The list placed Eli and me after cake if needed. She told me not to ruin the photos. The Candid image showed the list. The slideshow displayed it. Then she blamed me for what the image revealed. Facts have a beginning, middle, and end. Excuses usually only have a beginning. That night, I also wrote a short note for myself. No event attendance without a clear invitation. No photos where Eli is optional. No more standing behind the lights to protect someone else's image. Then I closed the laptop and sat with my son on the couch. We watched an old nature documentary until he fell asleep beside me. I looked at his face and understood something I had been afraid to admit. The boundary was not about getting a better photograph. It was about giving him a better lesson. The folder I made at home was not a weapon. It was a way to keep myself from returning to denial. I knew that, by morning, family members would begin offering softer versions of what happened. They would say the list was rushed. The screen was unfortunate. The phrase had been misunderstood. The folder held the order of events. It gave me something steadier than the pressure to forgive quickly, a clear memory. The next morning, I printed the photograph, as well as saving it. I placed it in the folder because paper made the moment feel less fragile. Digital messages can be ignored, deleted, or described as out of context. A printed image on a page asks a quieter question. What exactly are we supposed to deny here? I did not share the folder with anyone outside the immediate family. I did not post it, hint at it, or seek strangers to validate what I already knew. The record served a quieter purpose. It gave me a place to return when guilt tried to persuade me that I had overreacted. It reminded me that the boundary had not come from anger alone. It came from a sequence of visible facts. The next morning, I sent one message to my mother, Greg, and Natalie. I wrote it slowly. Last night, Eli and I were listed as after cake, if needed on the priority photo plan. Mom also asked me not to ruin the photos before the portraits began. The candid image shown during the slideshow made that arrangement visible. I am not interested in debating what was meant. I am telling you what we will do going forward. Then I listed the rule. If Eli and I are invited to an event, we are invited by name. We are included in the plan before the event begins. We are not placed in a separate category, held for later, or described as optional. If that cannot happen, we will decline. I added one final sentence. This is not punishment. It is a boundary. My mother called within minutes. I let it hingy. Then she sent a voice message. I did not listen to it until later that afternoon. When I did, she sounded exhausted. I never wanted Eli to feel unwanted, she said. I just wanted one nice picture. I listened twice. Then I wrote back, a nice picture cannot be built by asking a child to wait outside the frame. That was all. I did not demand an apology. I did not ask her to defend herself. I had already said what was required. The next move belonged to her. Writing the boundary down was harder than saying it aloud. A spoken boundary can be softened by the next conversation. A written one asks everyone to live with it. Still, I sent it because I wanted future invitations to be clear before we put on our shoes. Drove across town and stood in another room hoping for a place. Respect should not be a surprise offered after someone has been hurt. I did not include a deadline in the message. Boundaries are not negotiations with a countdown. They are conditions for access. My mother could choose whether she wanted a relationship that honored them. I could choose what I would do while she decided. That was the part I had never understood before. I did not need permission to protect my child. After I sent the message, I wrote the rule on a note near our front door. It was not for my mother. It was for me. When invitations arrived, I would remember to ask the questions before I began preparing excuses. Who is invited? Where will we sit? What is expected? A boundary becomes easier to keep when it is turned into a routine rather than a speech. You have to recreate every time. For 2 weeks, my mother did not contact me. Then she asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed because I wanted to hear whether she had understood anything beyond the embarrassment of the slideshow. We met at a small cafe near my apartment. She arrived with the birthday card Eli had made and a printed photograph from the party, not the formal family portrait. A candid of Eli standing beside me near the windows, holding my hand. I saw this in the gallery, she said. I didn't notice how far away you both were until after. I looked at the photograph. Behind us, the platform was bright with lights. My mother and the rest of the family were arranged in the background. Eli and I were partially in shadow. You saw us, I said. You just did not make room for us. She began to cry. I thought if I kept things simple, no one would fight. A month later, my mother asked whether she could take Eli to the botanical garden with us on a Saturday morning. There was no party, no guests, no platform, no photographer. I said yes, but I made the plan clear. We would meet at 10. We would walk through the gardens. If Eli wanted to leave, we would leave. There would be no forced photos. My mother agreed. At first, Eli was shy. He walked between us, reading the plant labels and asking questions about the greenhouse windows. My mother listened. She did not correct him or rush him. Near the fountain, she asked, "Would you like a picture with me?" Eli looked at me. I said, "It's your choice." He thought about it. Then he said, "Okay, but Mom has to be in it too." My mother looked at me, and something in her face changed. "Of course," she said. A woman walking nearby offered to take the photo. It was not polished. The sun was too bright behind us, and Eli blinked in the first shot. We laughed and took another. In the final image, my mother had one hand on Eli's shoulder and the other around my back. No list had decided the arrangement. No one was after cake if needed. It was not a perfect family portrait. It was better. It was honest. The garden picture mattered because it was not designed for an audience. No one was competing for a perfect arrangement. No one had to be placed later or hidden behind someone taller. Eli chose who stood beside him. My mother accepted the choice. That simple moment was more meaningful than the polished party portraits because it began with consent instead of control. Eli asked to keep a copy of the garden picture in his room. He taped it beside a drawing of our apartment and a postcard from the aquarium. I loved that. It meant he did not remember the day only as the party where he had been excluded. He remembered it as the day he learned that a different kind of family picture was possible. The ordinary nature of the garden visit helped all of us. There was no stage, no audience, and no one trying to prove a family story to guests. My mother had to meet Eli as a person instead of arranging him as a detail. When he chose to stand between us for the picture, I saw her pause before agreeing. That pause was small, but it was a different kind of leadership than the list had shown. I do not know whether my mother will ever fully understand how much that first photo plan changed me. Maybe she will remember the slideshow as the night I embarrassed her. Maybe Natalie will always believe I should have protected the party from the truth. Maybe some relatives will continue to call me sensitive whenever I refuse to accept a role that makes everyone else comfortable. But I know what I saw. I saw my son standing behind the lights while a family portrait was arranged without him. I saw a handwritten note that placed us after cake if needed. I saw a photograph put the plan on a screen where no one could pretend it was only in my head. And I saw what happened when I stopped trying to make the people who excluded us feel better about it. I did not need to fight for the center chair. I did not need to force myself into a picture designed to erase me. I needed to make one clear rule. We do not attend events where belonging is optional. We do not stand behind the lights so other people can look like a family. We do not teach children that love is something they earn by staying quiet. Now, when an invitation arrives, I read more than the date and location. I ask who is expected. I ask what the plan is. I listen for the phrases people use when they want us to disappear politely. And when the answer is unclear, I do not argue. I decline. Because I have learned that